Okay, thank you very much for joining us today for this digital open evening. And I'm going to be giving you a bit of an introductory talk to tell you all about what we do here at Leicester, or as the slide says, Archaeology and Ancient History, the Leicester Way, and why we hope that you would like to learn with us. So a quick warning. This presentation comes with some images of human remains. We are a school of archaeology and ancient history, and so if you are feeling at all squeamish, you might want to look away when we get to slides containing skeletons, and I shall warn you. But otherwise, let me introduce myself. My name is Dr. Catherine Tempest, and I work here in the School of Archaeology and Ancient History. In my own field, I'm a specialist in Roman history, looking at the period around Caesar, who is probably one of the most famous Romans of them all. And I work very closely alongside colleagues in archaeology to deliver both the teaching and research in our school. For me, one of the things that I find unique about Leicester is the close contact that the historians and the archaeologists have. This is a really joint way of operating, and I hope that I can convey some of that and the results of that in the presentation I give today. So to start with, you're going to be having a look at a lot of universities, either in person or online, and so you might want to be thinking, why Leicester? And as you're doubtless aware, as you start looking at universities, it's quite possible to become overwhelmed by all the statistics and the information that is being given to you. As you can see from this slide, we can play that game too. And very fortunately, I don't have to spend too long singing our own praises, as we have a history of winning awards here. As you can see, the important ones are that we've been awarded gold for our teaching, and that this year we were named the Daily Mail University of the Year for 2025. And so the university generally has a great reputation, and within our university, our school is particularly strong. So the annual National Student Survey, for example, is one of the largest exercises of its kind in the world, asking final year students, so the people that really matter, what they think about the education and the opportunities that they have received while studying at the School of Ancient History and Archaeology at Leicester. And at subject level, students ask a number of questions to gauge their overall positivity on the quality of the teaching, the feedback, the opportunities to get involved. And as you can see, archaeology and ancient history were ranked second in the UK for overall positivity. So we are really, really delighted with this result, which demonstrates how students, and indeed we, feel about archaeology and ancient history at Leicester. And I should add that all the images that you see on my slides are not taken from a generic image bank. They are our very own staff and students in the school here, so that whilst you're not here in person today, you can get a sense of some of the people that you might meet and encounter if you were to come and study here. But going back to the things that make Leicester generally so distinctive, I'm just going to highlight its proud history and its belief in the power of education to create positive change. There's a few facts on this side about its foundation, its creation after the First World War, the fact it was crowdfunded by the people of Leicester, and the legacy so that it would leave an opportunity for others, and education being at that core of our mission. And here in the School of Archaeology and Ancient History, we really hold that the study of the past is an essential part of that mission. But beyond all the number crunching, the data and the marketing, my main piece of advice is that you need to find a university and a degree programme that you want to be a part of. So I'm really happy to take any questions that come to you at the end of this talk, and I hope I'll give you a bit of a flavour about what it is that we offer here. And the reason I say this is because you have to find a degree programme that excites you. You're going to have to get up and study every day. So you have to be interested, but also students do better in terms of their grades and what they get out of a degree when they are invested in their course. And I think our school is very competitive in terms of the supportive learning environment and opportunities we provide both during and after your degree. Now, admittedly, when you work in these fields, you get used to being asked, why does all this stuff from the past matter? And the simple fact is, it's everywhere. We are surrounded by the past. Now, there are any number of images I could have used to illustrate this point, but in 2024 alone, we are finding new ways to tell the story of the gods. If you've happened to watch Netflix Chaos, you will know that well enough. We're finding new ways to enact the Roman scenes of spectacle. If you've seen Gladiator 2, you will know. And we're also finding new ways to rewrite the endings of really famous narratives. And coming up soon will be refined, starring as Odysseus in a film called The Return. So from the video game sector to films to novels, great works of literature, they've all been inspired by the past. And as I've said on this slide, the past is inescapable. We walk past it, we read it, we travel to it, we view it, we live it, we eat our popcorn whilst watching it. So every aspect of our lives has this connection, and a strong understanding of this point is a useful asset in any number of ways, including its applicability to a wide range of potential careers after you have graduated. So why study the past? And why do we study the past? Now, there are lots of reasons, and the main one that I haven't put on this slide is simply that it is awesome. It is so much fun to dig into the past lives of others and understand what made them tick. And so we also do it to appreciate and understand societies that were very different from our own. One of the things a lot of employers tell me when I talk to them, or a lot of students that have gone on to work, is the perspective that the ancient world, or the very ancient prehistoric world, or whatever they've studied through ancient history and archaeology has, it's enlightened their eyes to people very different to themselves. And this is a really important dynamic for entering the workplace. So understanding what the countless ways earlier cultures have contributed and shaped our society. And in the process of finding out all of this amazing stuff, you also develop excellent skills in terms of critical thinking, analysis, in-depth research, and especially the ability to communicate these ideas to a broad audience. And these are all highly desirable skills that you can take with you into any walks of life. So first up, there's my subject. As I said, I'm an ancient historian, and you might be wondering, what is ancient history? It's not always something that you will find on the curriculum at GCSE A levels or other qualifications. But broadly speaking, it typically focuses on ancient Greece and Rome. Again, my area is Rome. At Leicester, we're also really keen to expand this beyond the Greeks and Romans and to think about the other cultures around the ancient Mediterranean and see them more than simply the people that were waiting for the Romans to come and conquer, but really individual cultures that thrived and had their own priorities and dynamics. So we go beyond outside Greece and Rome and look at the cultures into which they also came contact with. Ancient history is typically characterised by its focus on a range of evidence, including a mixture of written texts, inscriptions, and material culture. And on my slide here, I've just got at the bottom left here, this letter from a Roman military camp at Vindolanda, which is in Northumberland, which is an invitation to a birthday party, believe it or not, and the first confirmed example of writing by women in Britain. I've also got images of a Greek black figure drinking cup, and also showing some examples of archaic period statues of women with those beautiful jazzy colours there. We often think of the Greeks and Romans as producing everything in marble, forgetting that it was also painted and incredibly eye-wateringly beautiful. Think of the word bling and you're almost close to what the Parthenon might have looked like in ancient times. All of this use of colour. So ancient history is characterised by its range of a diverse range of body of material, and archaeology is an even more extreme version of that, where it's the study of the past through material remains, encompassing all periods and cultures. It's not just artifacts, it includes things from the very large scale, from towns, buildings, huge infrastructures, down to the very smallest, as you can see, looking through the telescope there, at something as small as a bee's knee or a seed. That will tell us huge amounts of information about very big questions. So they are really complementary subjects and they work well as a pair, but they equally work well in their own right. And at Leicester, you've got the option either to build on both or to separate your work into different strands. Now, our school is ranged to research active world-class scholars with a diverse range of expertise that will support you in your learning journey. And this is important because you will be being taught primarily by the lecturers who not only teach, but also spend their time producing this world-leading research. And you are very much a part of that journey. To put some data on this claim, in the last nationwide research evaluation that all departments are involved in, our school had 94% of its research ranked as either world leading or internationally excellent. And we were ranked #1 in the country for the real world impact of our work. We've been winning awards for the best field school by the Archaeological Society this year. And so our work is really ranked very, very highly in terms of our sort of local communities. If you mention Leicester to anyone, and as I'll come up again and again, it's famous for the discovery and the identification of King Richard III under a car park near here. So again, showing what kind of discoveries my colleagues in archaeology have been unearthing. And as I said, we can't mention research in the school without highlighting this really famous project. And what's really nice about this project is it also gives you insight into another great aspect of the university generally, the extent to which multiple disciplines can come together to produce phenomenal results on a project. So as well as archaeology, there was input from our colleagues in history, for genetics to confirm it was actually him, biology and medicine who helped analyse his injuries, along with all the other groups listed on the slide here who helped make the full picture possible. We often tend to think, because of the media today, that there's a difference between STEM, the sciences, the technology and the engineering and the maths, and the humanities and the arts, which include ancient history and archaeology. But in fact, the narrative is changing to promote STEAM, and that these scientific and technological and engineering advances work best when you have a study of the arts and the humanities within them. And that is exactly what Richard III project shows, that this was an amazingly varied team effort with different expertise being brought in where critical. Now, across our curriculum, we also have themes that apply to both disciplines in very different ways. So, for example, both archaeology and ancient history address questions like, what does it mean to be human? This can refer to studying human evolution through the archaeological record, but equally can refer to works of ancient philosophers like Aristotle on this slide, or the historians that have grappled with this question. So I did warn that there would be human remains, and here's one of our skeletons showing how you can examine what it means to be human by looking at factors like diet, health, through the material remains. So we might approach them in very different ways, but we're still asking the same fundamental questions. Another topic that frequently arises concerns the natures of elites and hierarchies, along with forms of inequality. Archaeology and ancient history leave us these great symbols and expressions of wealth and power. We might think of the Egyptian pyramids, or the first Emperor Augustus shown here on the slide, who claimed to have found Rome a city of brick and left it marble. But we can also examine the other side of that story. And we can look at the dirt it leaves behind. And one of my colleagues, Jack Lennon, works particularly on marginalisation and dirtiness in his research on ancient Rome. While in archaeology, my colleague Philippa Walton looks at the stuff the Romans threw away and they wasted, and what was left in the material remains of the ancient city, looking at things like the amount of sewage that was pumped through the city on a daily basis. Over on the Greek side of things, Janie Messelia looks at various types of bodies in the ancient Greek world, and another colleague, Alice Sampson, has a whole module on the archaeology of colonialism in the Americas. So overlap is everywhere, both in our research interests and by extension, the teaching that is inspired by our research. And this follows into another major theme, that of cultural interaction and exchange. And this image depicts on the left the Spanish arrival in the Americas. But quite obviously, this is from the perspective of the Spanish colonizers, how they received the images they saw. That's something for archaeology to investigate. And on the other side of the screen, the image is Hadrian's Wall, previously thought of as a great dividing line between the civilized Roman world and the barbarian fringes. But now, through the study of texts and archaeological evidence, we're appreciating that there's considerable interaction across this boundary, which alters our perception of it dramatically. So the questions overlap, and also the type of questions overlap. It's not about when, where, or who did something. That's kind of the preamble and the stuff of pub quizzes. What we ask is about the why and the how. These are the important ways of thinking that we try to encourage through the study of our various topics. So instead of old-fashioned assumptions around when the Roman Empire collapsed or fell, we start thinking about why it evolved or changed over time. Similarly, we might think about the importance of why people started farming and how it affected communities. Why did the nature of towns change over time? Or how did Spain conquer the Aztec and Inca? And all of these questions have really, really complex answers that require you to take into account and synthesize a range of evidence to produce a solid answer. So I hope that gives you a bit of a demonstration of what spurs us and interests us as ancient historians and archaeologists in the school here. And that's really reflected in the teaching that we provide as well. So what can you do with us? Here's on the slide is a list of our single honours programmes. As I said, you can either forge a specific pathway or take a joint honours degree. So our single honours are in Bachelors in Archaeology, a Bachelors of Science in Archaeology, and I'll come back to the difference between those two subjects. You can take a Bachelor's degree in Ancient History, or if you want to pair up your subjects, you can do a Bachelor's in Ancient History and Archaeology, or Ancient History and History, or you can go with History and Archaeology, because all of these programmes have lovely synergies in the way that we operate, think, and in the subject material that we can deliver. To come back to the sort of distinct courses, you might wonder, what do I mean when I say you can either do a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science in Archaeology? And you might be wondering which is right for you. Broadly speaking, we tend to suggest that students that want to pursue a career in heritage and are interested in that side of things, museums, education, the heritage sector, will find more of reward in the Bachelors of Arts in Archaeology. Whereas students that are finding that they want to go down a path of pursuing professional archaeological practice will go down the path of a Bachelors of Science. And these are students that are thinking about a career in commercial archaeology and materials specialists. Now, I should say that when you start in the first year, it doesn't really matter, because from that year you take all of the same modules. So you only really start forging those pathways in the second year of your degree, so that you can learn which route to take by actually studying it. And I should also say that students that have studied a BA in archaeology very often go into commercial archaeology, and students that have done a Bachelor's of Science in archaeology very often go into work in the heritage sector. So it's not mutually exclusive, but it does support you to start developing skills that are relevant to those careers as you are going along the way, without limiting you either. So you have those options that you would only really need to start taking from the second year of your degree onwards. Otherwise, the Bachelor's in Ancient History, as I mentioned earlier, is studying ancient Greece, Rome, and the surrounding culture of those who came into contact with them across the Mediterranean. It places the emphasis on the texts and the material remains of the ancient world, with a strong focus on the ancient sources. There's absolutely no language requirement, so you don't need to be able to read Latin or Greek in order to study this degree. But if you are interested, their options are available to study languages, including a very popular course run by my colleague who teaches Babylonian language for her final year undergraduates. As I said, we like to go beyond Greece and Rome to study more than Latin and Greek, more than the Greek and Roman cultures, and think about other amazing civilizations that existed, Babylonia being one of them. So languages are by no means expected or desired or demanded, but if you desire to learn them, then that option is available for you. I would say the majority of our students, however, decide to combine the best of both subjects, taking lab modules alongside modules where they learn textual analysis skills. So the joint honours in ancient history and archaeology remains probably the most heavily subscribed of all of our courses. And that's because it also comes with fantastic opportunities to undertake fieldwork training and other internship options. So you can have the best of both worlds by taking both degrees. And I'll talk about what they involve now. In your first year, you'll undertake broad introductory subjects, really to make sure that everyone has a good grounding in the subject. Some students may come with some background knowledge, and if we're doing our job properly, by about week 3, they'll be challenged to move beyond what they've ever studied before and be introduced to new subjects. But for those many students who come to us without having any background and experience in ancient history or archaeology, this serves to level the playing field so that by the end of the first year, everyone has got the solid foundations from which they can start to build their interests and their specialisms. And it's from the second year onwards that you start taking a range of core and optional modules so that you can start creating your own pathway to suit your interests. Then that leads into the final year where you've got optional modules. They're more specialist courses, often driven and inspired by staff research interests, and the culminating work of art in your dissertation, which is, I often describe, a research internship, when you learn how to study at a much higher and independent level than you would have done so previously in your studies. So ancient history looks something a little bit like this, and I do encourage you to go away and have a dig around our web pages, because this material is all available there for you as well. In the first year, you've got introductory modules on approaching ancient Greek and Roman evidence. You've got introductions to Greek and Roman history. You go beyond the Mediterranean to look at some of those other cultures, looking at how we study them. And also you will get an introduction to world archaeology, both in the years BC and in the years AD, that fine dividing line between everything that happened before the year 0 BC and everything that happened in the years after it, the designation AD. Year 2, you've got a couple of core modules, and I'll come back to what they are, as well as some optional modules. But the core modules are there to really develop your skills further, doing some more project work, looking at sources and methods and theories that make ancient historians a profession in its own right as well. All of our degree programmes come with the option to study abroad in the third year before you go on to your final year. If you can obviously continue straight through the 3 years, as most students do, but if you do want that optional year abroad, you would take it between years 2 and 3. And in that final year, you do your dissertation plus the optional modules. And a similar structure applies to the archaeology programme, with introduction to world history again, and archaeology essentials, practical aims and methods, thinking through things, using evidence, critical thinking and debates. So really providing a full range of foundational modules on which you can develop. Going into the second year, where you've got core modules in archaeological theory and the all-important fieldwork. And then a third compulsory module, depending on whether you decide to specialise on the BA route or the Bachelors of Science route, you might undertake further training in heritage skills or professional practice. So again, getting you ready for the career path that you think you are approaching. And that continues into the final year, where you have a compulsory dissertation, and then either some field work or some projects in professional archaeology before taking your optional modules. Joint honours programme, of course, you get a bit of a mix of everything of that, so you can have a look on this slide to see what it would look like. You'd get your introduction to Greek and Roman history, you'd get your introduction to Greek and Roman ancient evidence, and you'll get all of your essential introductions to world archaeology, the debates, and all of the essential nitty-gritty there, before moving into the second year, where you'll get your field work and your theory, and also your sources and methods for ancient historians. So you get a very wide training to cover both disciplines, before moving into the third year, where you undertake more field work, a further dissertation, and the optional modules, which are by they're the most fun out of all of this. And I won't talk through this slide. I'll let your eyes scan over it to see anything that jumps out. But to me, looking at the second year options, I'm automatically looking at some of the really exciting things, to me at least, of archaeology of the Roman Empire, the ancient Near East. We've got artifact analysis and Neolithic, Bronze Age and Iron Age Britain and Ireland. So as I said, this information is on our webpage. You can go and dig around a bit more to think about what they involve. And then our final year options, archaeozoology, is always the one that jumps out at me first there because it's such a great title. But you can also look at things like Great Greek monuments or early Christian Europe or the Greek and Roman art. You can look at warfare and violence, power and difference, human skeletal analysis. And I'll just talk a little bit about how we teach before giving you an example of two of those modules. Largely speaking, you'll be taught in a range of setups, from the lectures, where an instructor will provide you with all the essential information, to smaller seminar groups where you'll discuss sources and your opinions, and really get to have your say on the debates that matter. You'll also be invited into the labs to do practical laboratory work in practical classes, learning how to handle materials correctly if you're studying archaeology. And of course, as I said, field work being a really important element of what we offer here. Very often you'll have one-to-one supervision with hands-on activities, so that you will experience the large-scale lectures, but you'll also get the dedicated personal support needed to help you personally flourish and thrive in your studies. I said I'd talk a bit about a couple of the modules to sort of put flesh on the bones of that idea. And one of these is human skeletal analysis, which our third year students love because it's practical lab-based skills in identifying skeleton remains. So the analysis of bodies for all sorts of features, age, sex, disease, injury, or understanding how the body changes through life. On the Roman history side of things, one of our popular newer modules is Justinian and his age, which explores a really turbulent part of late antiquity. And this is an emperor whose reign saw every type of upheaval imaginable. He launched wars to retake lost parts of the Roman Empire, and he was nearly toppled by urban riots in Constantinople that started among factions, of all things, of supporters at the chariot races, so worse than any football outbreak you've seen. And then from the ashes of these riots, he built the Hagia Sophia, that wonderful monument to antiquity today and one of the true marvels of human history. So his reign experienced the arrival of the bubonic plague and really lived through some pretty interesting times. It's often referred to as the end of antiquity, and this course gets you to examine why. But largely our degrees are designed to develop your love of the subject alongside practitioners and researchers who have that passion too. It allows you to build a degree that suits your interests and supports your career aspirations by embedding key transferable skills, those skills that I've already mentioned: critical thinking, analysis, team and individual work, as well as the professional skills that you will need. This is all underpinned by a great commitment to offer sector-leading internships and placements. This slide just introduces you to the main, the range of those, and I'll talk a little bit more about what they offer now. The real jewel in our crown is our partnership with the University of Leicester Archaeological Services. So we actually have a professional archaeological outfit on site in our building, offering 15 student internships every year. And I should just say that I think I mentioned earlier, they've just won a prize for some of the staggering fieldwork that they did last year in Archaeology. It was also the subject of a Time Team episode if you want to go away and have a look for that on YouTube. In ancient history, there's a chance to get involved with the Leicester Classics hubs, going into schools and supporting the introduction of ancient classical subjects in state schools where there is otherwise no provision, providing a wide range of enrichment opportunities and providing resources and support for extracurricular activities and clubs. So whatever your interests and whatever your skills, you'll be able to put them into practical work experience whilst you are studying for your degree here. After graduation, you'll then be given an academic qualification that can lead to further postgraduate degrees or a wide variety of diverse and exciting careers. Some statistics show that 98% of ancient history studies students are employed during further study just 6 months after graduation, and 100% of students employed during further study in archaeology. Those careers might be subject related in field archaeology units, in museums or heritage organisations, but we often see our students going on to do great things in other areas: journalism, accountancy, civil service, banking, oil industry, nursing, teaching. To get into the police force now, you need to have a degree, and police are heavily recruiting from students that have got these kind of skills. To the armed forces, professional photography, law, you name it, we can probably find a student that has gone on to do it. Not normally something like becoming a medical doctor or veterinary science, for which quite specific skills are required, but it really opens up a wide variety of careers because the skills that archaeology and ancient history impart are so interdisciplinary and wide-ranging that they can be transferred to anything that you want to try your hand at with qualifications there. So we teach the subjects we're leading experts in, and as I said, what we really hope to achieve by this is to pass on passion for the subject that you also want to study. We've got the third best archaeology research in the department in the UK, according to Research Excellence Frameworks, and our highest scores for the impact of our research. Going back to what I mentioned earlier, you'll be studying with the people that are out there on the field or writing the books in these subjects. But we really take teaching seriously here, as underpinned by our Gold Award. You'll be appointed by a personal tutor that looked after. You'll receive excellent pastoral support. We've got programmes that help you get a head start, and employability is built into all of our degrees, with additional support available to students from wider university sectors. You might want to know what we are looking for in return, and these are, broadly speaking, the grades that we ask for. A, B, B in all of our degree programmes, except for the archaeology programmes, which will ask for 3 Bs, or the UCAS points equivalent. So we will accept UCAS points from EPQs to make up that tariff as well. Now, if we make an offer, we will invite you to an offer holder day, and this includes a kind of an interview, but really it's a getting to know each other session where we use this to get to know what makes you tick, and we can often use that information to, in many cases, to lower your offer with our central teams by saying, this person is really, really passionate, we want them on board, please lower the offer, and by and large they do. So if you do receive an offer to attend one of our offer holder days, please do think about attending. Or if you can't, but you would like to take the availability, the offer of meeting a member of staff, as the Director of Admissions, I am always available for a Teams meeting should you like to chat further. And I will be showing you my email address at the end of this presentation so that you've got someone that you can just ping an email to or meet on Teams to discuss what it's really like studying and what we offer in return. You might be thinking, what else could I possibly want after all of this? I hope that's the impression I've left so far. But there are other options that our university uses to incentivise people to think about joining us, with guaranteed accommodation for all first-year campus-based students, really, really competitive rates with £69 a week with bills included, and a free student shuttle bus. Not all universities can claim to be quite so affordable, but Leicester has that reputation of being a city in that you can make your student loan go a long way and have a really, really good financial experience here as well. So I really hope that in this very short introduction, I've given you a flavour of what we offer, both generally as a university and specifically in the School of Archaeology and Ancient History. As I've mentioned several times, we've got staff who are leading experts in their respective fields, who are just ready and willing to pass on their love of the subject to the next generation. We put a huge emphasis on small group and hands-on teaching. And offering those sector leading internships and placements is really, really important. Our partnership with ULAS sets us apart, and as do the student results that keep confirming that they would place us as one of the top universities, both for the experience and the results that they gain by studying here. As I mentioned, and as I promised, that is my email address on the slide, but we also have time for some questions now at the end of this presentation, in case there's anything I whistled over too quickly and you'd like me to revisit, or if there's something that I haven't mentioned that you'd like to learn more about. So I'm going to hand over to our coordinator who is monitoring the chat box. Please use that facility to type up your questions, and they will be relayed to me so that I can then just respond to you directly. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Catherine, for the presentation. It was really informative to learn more about archaeology and ancient history. And while we wait for the questions to come through, could you tell us what does a typical day look like for archaeology and ancient history students at the University of Leicester?
I'd love to say there was such a thing as a typical day. And I think that's one of the things our students really love, is that it can be extremely varied. Your timetable will be split into different types of activities. For example, lectures, seminars, practical fieldwork, or hands-on sessions. You will definitely find that when you first receive your timetable, there will be large gaps and you'll be thinking, well, what am I going to do? This isn't quite like being at school or college. But it's because we also leave a lot of time for you to do independent supported learning. So everything we have here is supported by a virtual learning environment. And so we'll say, right, you've got a lecture on Monday, come along and read this chapter first. So there's an hour of your time taken up already reading a chapter of a book. But later in the afternoon, you're going to have a seminar. So can you also read some of these texts, or can you also have a look at some of these objects to start forming your impression of them? So a student might wake up at 9 o'clock and find, right, I've got an hour to do my really important reading for the lecture. And then they will dash onto campus, catch up with some friends over one of our nice coffee joints, perhaps. I might have been a bit ambitious by saying starting at 9. Our lectures tend to start a bit later, from about 10, sometimes in the afternoons. You might find that on any day you don't have anything in the morning at all. That is just how the day will pan out. And then you will be able to go to your lectures, where you'll receive sort of an introduction to the topic, the key debates, the key ideas that your lecturer wants you to take away from their class, before meeting later on in afternoons for those small group teaching and the hands-on sessions. So a day can look tremendously varied from one day to the next, especially when it comes to the field school and you're actually doing archaeology for the first time, getting up and getting to an archaeological site. So it also depends on the time of year that we're talking about here. But that is one of the joys of coming to university. You're really given the control over your own learning to a certain degree. We will say how we would like you to use that time, but outside of the fixed timetable, you've got that flexibility to decide, I'm going to spend an hour this afternoon preparing my seminar materials for tomorrow. I'm going to start trying to find some work experience. So your days are going to look very different from one day to the next, but that's how we like to keep it here, to put some of the control back into your hands, whilst also providing you materials that you can go away and start studying and developing your knowledge further with. I think that's about it.
Great, thank you. Another question that I have is, could you provide students some advice on what to get involved with prior to applying to university?
Yeah, brilliant question. You know what? There are so many small museums out there crying for volunteers. People always think about going to something like the British Museum to get work experience, but starting small can be really, really valuable, because you'll actually be given more responsibility. So you don't have to do any of this, but if you did want to, you could certainly look around at a local museum close to where you live and just get involved, offer your services. You might even go back to your own school and say, look, I'm going to be learning about ancient history and archaeology, and we didn't actually cover it. Would you like me to come and talk to students about it a bit more? We'll also give you sample reading lists, so that, especially if you don't have any prior background, you can just start doing some reading. We'll recommend some podcasts, we'll recommend some television programs, anything that will help immerse you into the worlds that you're going to be learning about. So there's loads you can do, whether that's brushing up on reading knowledge or getting involved with the community. One of the things I should have mentioned about when you are here at Leicester is we have an amazing community heritage hub where students do get involved with their local communities, and it's something that we really cherish and advertise as a fundamental part of what you can be doing. So that opportunity will also be available for you when you join Leicester. But if you want to get some experience beforehand, that would be a really valuable thing that you could be thinking about doing.
Great, thank you. Thank you for answering these questions. Yeah, this is really helpful to know. We have also not had any more questions come through, so I'll hand over to you for some closing remarks now.
Absolutely. Very often when you attend one of these presentations, you're being bombarded with information. I gave you a lot in a very short space of time. So if you're going to do one thing from this session, please just make a note of my email address, klt27@leicester.ac.uk, and feel free to come and ask me questions afterwards and follow up in a more informal setting. It's lovely meeting potential students, and so I'm always happy to jump on a quick Teams meeting, or if you're in Leicester and you want to pop in, let us know and I'll make sure that a member of staff is available to show you around our facilities, or to even meet some students whilst you're here. So don't think that this is a replacement for the open day. Please think of this session as the start of a journey that might lead to you joining us for your academic career. So thank you very much.